Hello there, and welcome to another Black History Month interview. I am so excited today to be here with Pastor Robert G. Johnson. He's actually my pastor, and I'm actually his assistant. I work for this man, so we have kind of a lot of hats going on here.
Yes, we do. Yes, we do.
So welcome, Pastor Johnson. Thank you for being here with us today.
Thank you, Chajuan. Thank you for having me.
Yes.
Thank you for doing this with me. I'm excited about this interview. Excited about what you're doing.
Oh, wonderful. I'm glad to hear that. Well, Pastor Johnson has been a full-time minister for 25 years. 25 years of dedicated service to his congregations, to the people in the community, and the people in the world. So just even that one thing, that's just an amazing thing. So I'm very, very honored to have you here.
Thank you. Thank you.
So we're going to start off this interview with that one famous question, because it is Black History Month. Tell us, what does Black History Month mean to you?
Okay, great question. Great question. So Black History Month is important for me, Chajuan, because I grew up in South Mississippi. When I started school, I know you feel like I'm 1,000 years old. Old as dirt. She thinks I'm old as dirt. And short, by the way.
Oh, no!
But when I started school in '72, the public schools in Columbia, Mississippi had recently integrated. So I always went to integrated schools. But throughout my grade school years in my history courses, most of the history that we learned was from, and this is not to offend anybody, this is just reality.
Yes.
The history was told from a white person's perspective.
Okay.
And it was told through the lens of the people in power. And so there were very minimal references to the significant contributions that African Americans had made to the development and building of our country. And so as I got older, did my own reading, of course went off to college, went to grad school, learned more about African American history, and I was just astonished at how much I had missed in grade school. And so then the whole concept of Black History Month became more important, because I said, okay, well, we get at least 1 month where we can focus for an entire month. We can focus on recovering and celebrating the history that so many of us did not get to experience or encounter when we were in grade school. And it's stuff that relates to the fact that African Americans were not just slaves in the sense that we were slaves with no contribution, but through our role as slaves, that we were creating things, we were building things.
Yes.
We were on the cutting edge of civil rights, human rights issues. And so African Americans have been a vital part of the whole building of this country, and we need to recover that history and celebrate that, because it has a lot to do with how we see ourselves, self-esteem, self-concept, which has to do with self-confidence. And so what I find is that the more young Black people learn about who they are and where they've come from and their legacy and their heritage as African Americans, the more confident they are, which leads to better performance in school and other activities. So that's why it's important for me.
Awesome. I love your answer.
Good.
I think a lot of times people think, okay, we have Black History Month, it's just another thing that we do. And a lot of times people don't know the meaning behind it. So for us to get a more of a big grasp on the history of why this month came about, for it to be celebrated, it's a great thing.
Yes.
Okay.
Yes, I think so.
So in all of your many years of ministry, have you seen a trend in the African-American community feeling discouraged when they are needing counseling or therapy?
Yes. So, and I'm sure we'll get deeper into this in a few minutes, but African Americans tend not to view counseling as a positive resource or as a positive outlet for confronting, with coping, learning to cope with life. We kind of use it only as a last option. And by the time most people come in to see me for counseling, it's too late.
Oh, wow.
And so what I try to do is tell most of my congregants have been African Americans, as I tell them, particularly, for example, married couples, don't wait until you're at the brink of divorce to come talk to me. Build counseling into how you do marriage, so that even when you're working through little disagreements, that you learn to hear a third party, you learn to hear other options, you learn to talk through things, you learn how to improve your communication skills, you learn how to listen, that's part of the counseling process, so that if you build that into your relationship, then you can maybe avoid getting to the point of severity, whether it's divorce or whether it's being suicidal, deep depression. There's some steps you can take along the way before you get to that point. But I have seen that African Americans, there's a hesitancy, and I think a lot of that is just due to a lack of understanding of what counseling is and its role and how it can be a blessing to us.
Okay.
Yeah.
So you see a lot of people waiting to the very last resort
Yes.
before they seek counsel with you a lot of times.
Yes.
Okay.
Yes. And at that point, it's almost like, well, it's nothing I can do because the walls of resentment are up.
Right.
Or you're already so deep in debt that it's nothing I can do. I just can refer you out.
Right.
But, whatever the issue is, don't wait until like it gets to ultimate severity before you take it to someone else and try to get some help. Build counseling into your lifestyle.
Okay. I like that. That's a new healthy type of lifestyle.
Healthy lifestyle, yes.
Right. Okay.
Yes.
Why do you feel that African Americans tend to stay away from therapy as a whole?
So again, I think African Americans stay away is because it is not something that's well understood in our community. We've kind of labeled it as for crazy people or for weird people.
Right.
And so no one wants to see themselves as crazy or weird, right? So then I don't need to go to a counselor. I'm not crazy. I don't need to go to a counselor. I'm not weird. I'm not, I'm not.
There's nothing wrong with me.
There's nothing wrong with me.
Right.
And so if you build that barrier up front, not only do you not go to the counselor, but you won't even take the time to really investigate what therapy and counseling can really do for you, because you've written it off. You've just kind of said that's for the weird, crazy people. I'm not weird and crazy, so not only do I need not go to a counselor, I don't even need to read about that stuff and do that kind of research. Yeah, so I think that's kind of what happens.
So that's amazing what you just said. So a person not even wanting to educate themselves on what it could do for them.
Right.
That's it. And that's a shame. That's a shame that something that could literally change their life or help them out of different situations that they wouldn't want to do it because of the shame behind it.
Right. Okay. And we do that, of course, in many different ways. If there are things out there that can help us. But if we label those things as, okay, that's for only those kinds of people, or those, and I don't want to be seen as that kind of person, then we exclude ourselves from the process of learning about those things, to investigate, to at least see maybe there's something here that can help me. And so that's one of the things we've got to just break down that barrier and teach people to not write stuff, to at least to take the time to learn about things before you write them off.
Okay, I like that. Yeah. So tell me, mental illness is a huge thing. And I know that every church deals with it. Every family deals with mental illness. And we hear people talk about it more and more all the time. Why do you think mental illness is stigmatized so much in the Black community?
Again, I think that, it goes back to not understanding. Like most people think that, for example, depression. Let's take depression. In most Black communities, people view depression as, you just need to get over it. You need to stop throwing a pity party. And a lot of depression has nothing to do with people's choices. It's chemical imbalances in the brain. Okay. And so it's not people are choosing to be that way. It's that they have these chemical imbalances that are creating these moods. And so, of course, people have to take time, of course, to understand brain chemistry and how all of that works. And how it affects mood. But then if it's chemical imbalance, then that has to be corrected with medicine. Okay? And so I think in the African American community, there's this stigma because we think that these things are just for the worst of people, or for people who just don't know how to cope with life. I just want to feel sorry for themselves. It's just for people who want somebody to pet them and that kind of thing. And it's a total misunderstanding of how both chemical imbalances as well as the stresses of life create challenges for people, and at any time people are dealing with trying to cope with the issues of life and the stresses of life, and they may have challenges with dealing with that, which may lead to mood changes and challenges in
their attitude and all that. Right.
Yes.
Okay. So it's kind of funny that you said that. Sometimes people believe that people that are going through depression, like, I just feel sorry for myself, woe is me type situation.
Yes.
And they're having a chemical imbalance that they may need medication for.
Exactly.
Now, why do you think people are afraid to be on medication? If someone was to say that you are depressed and you need medication, why do you think people are afraid to take the medication that they need that would benefit them?
Well, it's this. I think there are multiple reasons. What I've seen is, number one, again, lack of education, lack of understanding, people not understanding medicine, and just kind of having a taboo attitude towards medicine. Okay. And then for a lot of men, it's this tough guy attitude. Like, if I got to be on pills for something, then that makes me less of a man.
Wow.
For some women, if I got to take medication for it, then that means I'm not owning my stuff, and I'm not being a mature person, and I'm not taking responsibility. My mama taught me to take responsibility. And it's just all those kinds of attitudes that are so unhealthy. And so I think that one of the things we can do as an answer to that is, through the church and through other vehicles in the African American community, is begin to be more intentional about educating people about the whole concept of counseling, therapy, self-care, self-development, and then the numerous professional resources that are available in our communities to help people.
Wonderful. With you being a pastor, religion is a big thing, of course. Most African Americans, 50%, are going to some type of religious ceremony at least once per week, right? In terms of...
Well, it used to be once per week. Now it's...
So basically you're saying people need to be coming to church more often. Well, and that's a whole nother scenario for us to talk about at a different
Keep watching. I'm kidding. Keep watching. Don't turn off.
But in terms of you being a pastor, and we're talking about most pastors are going to say, pray about your situation. You have a tough situation going on, pray about it, versus you need to go see therapy or come see me and so we can talk and you can get some counseling. Tell me, what is your take on that, Pastor Johnson, in terms of pray your problems away and everything will be fine, versus this is something that you may need more than just prayer. What are your thoughts?
So I think what I like to see people do is have a both and attitude.
Okay.
So it's not either or. Pray, sure. I mean, we believe in the power of prayer. We believe in the power of healing. I believe in supernatural healing. But I believe that also that God uses other natural tools for our healing. So, for example, if I have a heart condition, I'm going to pray for my heart condition and ask God to heal my heart, but I'm also going to go to the heart doctor.
Right.
So in the same sense, if I'm battling depression, if I'm having suicidal thoughts, if I'm having problems in a relationship, having problems that I need to have a third party involved in, then I'm going to see it in the same. I'm going to pray about it, but I'm also going to seek whatever resources are available, because I believe that God, though both of those are God's work, both the supernatural stuff that happens through prayer, but also God putting in people's hearts and minds how to create resources that help us be healthier and happier. Whether that's medicine, therapy, that those are resources given to us by God as well. So again, I would just say to people, pray, certainly be prayerful, but also be practical. And go.
Pray, but be practical.
Yes.
Okay, I like that.
I may preach that Sunday.
Okay, that's the next sermon coming up. Tell me this. With Caucasian people,
By the way, can I add one?
Of course. Go for it. Go
Great
for
quote.
it.
So, one of my favorite quotes that relates both to African American history
Uh-huh.
and prayer and getting and doing the things you need to change your life. Frederick Douglass once talked about slavery and prayer, and he said, "I prayed." His quote is, "I prayed for 100 years for things to change, but nothing happened until I got off my knees and started to work."
Wow.
That's a profound quote, and the quote may not be exact, but that's basically the gist of the quote. Is basically like, I've been praying. And Frederick Douglass, by the way, was a clergy person as well as a civil rights leader, but he talked about what it was going to take, what it took to change slavery. That I've been praying for years, but nothing changed until I got off my knees and started working.
So basically, prayer without works is dead.
It's dead. There you go.
Okay. I hope y'all did y'all get that? Prayer without works is dead, and that's coming from a lead pastor.
Yes.
You have to put work and effort behind your prayer, or it's not going to work out for you.
Yes.
Okay.
Yes.
And I hear someone's phone. All right. So, oh, you're fine. Let's see here. Well, when we're talking about Caucasian people, a lot of times they're more willing to talk about them seeking therapy. Like even with normal conversation, they could just be talking to me like, yeah, I'm going to go see my therapist when I get off work tonight. And, I'm dealing with this issue. And, and it's just so normal a lot of times for Caucasian people to talk about that. Like it's just fine. Why do you think African Americans don't do the same if they're seeking counsel?
So that's what you hit on, a very significant issue in America, and that separates the African American demographic from our white Anglo demographic in America. So our legacy as slaves, we came into this country, and so our exposure to religion, which is kind of how we got enculturated into America, was through Christianity. So Christianity was used not only to convert black slaves, but it was also used to enculturate black slaves into to white culture. Okay. And so, but of course, if you read the Bible, there are some revolutionary ideas in the Bible. And so they wanted to use Christianity to enculturate us, but they didn't want us grasping those revolutionary ideas. So we were taught a version of religion that was basically pray, be a good person, humble yourself, and wait for heaven. Okay? And if you look at how African Americans have handled finances, self-care, relationships, education, we're still overcoming that miseducation of how you manage your life. That we still have large portions of our demographic that believe that pray, go to church, be a good person, and that's gonna help me. And then you go to other communities that are Christian also, and they're praying, they're being good people. They want to go to heaven, but they're also reading investment books. They're also teaching their children to be entrepreneurs. They're also preparing their children very early to start aspiring towards the elite colleges and universities. You see, so there's a different mindset, and so we're still overcoming that. And white people they do that well, and so we don't blame them. I celebrate that they do that. That they are, particularly white Christians, that they're able to have strong faith in God, but also understand that strong faith empowers me. That when I read about how should I invest my money, that prayer life is going to help me be discerning and wise in making those decisions. And so that's how they live their lives. So that's why you go to black communities in the city and they look one way, predominantly black communities. You go to other white communities and they look totally different. And you begin to try to figure out what's the difference. And it's because black people have to expand our knowledge base in the same way that our white brothers and sisters have done. Expand our knowledge base so that we do the basics of the faith. We pray, be good, do the right thing, look forward to going to heaven, but also understand that heaven is here and now. and that if you expose yourself to the right resources, we can begin to live even more empowered lives. And I'm not saying that, I know there are large segments of the African American community have grasped that and are already doing that, but that's what it's going to take for us to empower our communities even more.
More of a majority type thing instead of a minority.
Right.
That makes a lot of sense.
By the way, another Black History note.
I told y'all this man was full of knowledge.
For a great example of what we're talking about is the Tulsa Greenwood community. So there's a community in Tulsa, Oklahoma called Greenwood, where there were it was a Black community where there were banks, hotels, hospitals, just everything. There were attorneys, and it was called the Black Wall Street. And of course, that was a tragic event, racist event that happened where the KKK came in and burned the community down. And it's a tragic story. But my point is that was an occasion where Black people were both Christian, but entrepreneurial, well-educated, and exposing themselves to the best information on the market. And as a result of that, they had built this amazing, wealthy, productive community. And it can happen. It can happen.
It can happen. Yeah, definitely. Tell me this. Have you seen an increase of people seeking counsel through you just in the last 3 years?
No, actually, I've seen a decrease.
Wow.
And I'm not sure why. It may be a reflection of, I'm not going to talk to him. But I've actually seen a decrease in people seeking counseling. And I'm not sure why. It may just, most of I did a lot of counseling when I served at a large mega church in Houston.
Okay.
But of course, you had more people.
Now, when you say mega church, how many people are we talking about?
So that was a church at that time when I was there. The congregation was the size of about 15,000 people on membership.
Wow.
Average attendance 7,000, but membership on membership rolls 15,000. So that was a greater counseling need.
Yeah.
So it may be that I'm thinking that there has been a decrease because since then I haven't been at a congregation that size.
Right.
So then there are not as many people. But I just part of it may be that some of our people are finding other ways
to cope,
to get the help they need, and that they're kind of not going to that pastor as much. I don't know. That's worth researching as to why what's going on with that.
Definitely.
Yeah.
Okay. Switching gears a little bit, being a pastor and also my boss and mentor. When I came to you to let you know that I was going to be starting a professional cuddling business, what were your thoughts? That's how his eyes were looking too. What?
Not true. Actually, I was excited. And if I'll take you back.
Yes, take us back. Take me back. Take us back. Yes.
Okay, so I'm always looking for creative ways to reach people. So that's one of my things is that I think that the church gets boxed in how we understand ministry.
Right.
And we think youth ministry, children's ministry, the basic stuff. And I think to reach this next generation, we've got to be more creative, particularly if we're going to compete with all the other resources that are multiplied for people in our communities over the last 25 years. So there are things that people used to go to the church for that they don't go to the church for anymore. Like people don't need to go to the church youth ministry for a place for their youth anymore, for example. And so I think that because of that, I'm always looking for new creative ways of reaching people. So when you came to me, I was so excited because I'm like, yes, do it. As a matter of fact, if I recall, I even said, look, we can make space here in the church. You can use one of the offices for it and so just do it here. And so I thought it was a wonderful idea because I saw it as a creative, innovative approach to connecting. with people
Mm-hmm.
and of affirming people's humanity. Because one of my core principles, Chajuan, is that Jesus didn't come to make us Christian. He came to make us human.
Wow.
So if we let the Christianity get in the way of affirming people's humanity,
Mm-hmm.
we've missed the point.
Wow.
We've missed the point. So Jesus never said go make people Christians, and
Mm-hmm.
he never said you got to become a Christian.
Right.
He hung out with people.
He said he wants you to love
He
people.
wanted you to love people. He wanted you to love people. And so no matter how broken they were, no matter
Right.
what mistakes they had made, the only people that Jesus ever got upset with in the scripture
Mm-hmm.
were the religious people
Mm.
who were using religion to keep from affirming humanity as an excuse for not
Wow.
affirming humanity. So he would say to the religious Jewish leaders,
Mm-hmm.
You proselytize and bring people into your religion, but
Right.
they become 2 more times the children of hell than they were before. And the point he was making is because instead of using this beautiful thing, this beautiful gift from God to cultivate people, to connect with people,
Right.
to affirm their humanity, you're using it to scandalize people and to break people and to oppress people.
Wow.
And so I saw cuddling because I believe in the importance of touch.
Mm-hmm.
I believe in the importance of human connection.
Yes.
I believe that in the importance of hearing people's stories, and that a lot of what we try to do through religious stuff,
Mm-hmm.
if we would just be human, that people would trust us and they would connect us, and we would have to do a lot less to be vehicles of transformation, because a lot of that has to do with whether people trust us and they feel affirmed as human beings.
Wow.
So to me, what you're doing is a great kingdom way.
Mm-hmm.
We don't have to label it kingdom,
Right.
but it is a kingdom. It is a Jesus way of affirming human beings.
Oh,
And
that's
so I think it's
beautiful.
awesome.
That's beautiful.
Yeah.
In everything that you said just now, and knowing the importance of touch, because I mean he knows the importance of touch. How important is touch with healing? What have you seen?
Powerful. Awesome question. Awesome question. So you'll notice in the Bible says in the Epistle of James to lay hands on the sick, to anoint them with oil. And then Jesus laid hands on the sick, and there's this whole thing about laying on of hands. And it's not that, I used to say that it's not the hand, it's the power of God. Okay. Which is true. But what I understand now that as I've matured and I've learned to embrace my own humanity,
Right.
and learn to love myself, that the touch, however, is the conduit and the vehicle through which the power of God gets communicated.
Wow.
And so there's a difference in preaching at someone, talking at someone, talking to someone,
Right.
and communicating something through touch.
Okay.
Okay, and so we're human beings, and it's very interesting. Without any explanation, we don't really know why. But my assumption is throughout the Gospels that Jesus heals people, does multiple healings, and in many of those occasions, he uses the power of touch.
Yes.
Like on one occasion, he heals a blind man's eyes, and he goes through the whole thing of tangibility, putting his hand in the mud, wiping a man's eyes,
Right.
with lepers who you were not even supposed to get in proximity with
No,
lepers.
not coming close at all.
Right, he touched them.
Right.
So things like, and I think
He was touching the people that nobody wanted to touch.
that nobody wanted to touch. That nobody, and he, on many occasions, he didn't preach a message with. Like there was no sermon.
Right.
There was no scripture quote. But just touch.
Yes.
Be healed. Be well. The bent over woman. He's in the temple, and a woman comes in, and she's bent over, and he says, "Rise up, daughter," and calls her daughter of Abraham. So he affirms her humanity.
Yes.
So that whole thing about affirmation, touch.
Yes.
And I will say, Chajuan, that I thought it was a wonderful idea. I believe in the power of touch. But I also like the idea that you were thinking creatively. Because I think that what you're doing, like for more conservative people, it is a little shock value to it.
Yes.
But folks, if people are ignoring you, you can't impact them. Like to me, the worst thing that you can be is ignored or irrelevant.
Definitely.
So we have to not just go out and do crazy stuff just for shock value,
Right.
but listen to the Spirit of God for new and creative ways of doing things that will catch people's attention. Be the purple cow, right?
Purple.
Hey, that's it.
Power color too, I tell you.
See this.
Yes. We're here. Tell me this. With you growing up in Mississippi, that's where he's from, and you have both of your parents in your life.
Yes.
How important was touch in your household?
So it's very interesting. I grew up in a household where there was, in a sense, a lot of touching.
Okay.
And in many senses, there was a lack of touching. So my father is he's a part of what they call the silent generation.
Okay.
In that generation, those men were not into playing with their kids, being relational with their kids. They considered themselves strong men, and the less emotion they showed, the better.
Okay.
And
So they were providing for their family, working.
Provide for the family.
Right.
Yeah, I don't play with you. I ain't got time to play, and and so my dad was not a touchy, huggy kind of person.
Okay.
But he was a kind man, and he communicated his love through kindness and through care.
Okay.
My mom, on the other hand, was a touchy, feely person who would kiss and hug, and so I grew up, and my mom would touch and kiss and hug on me. So much so to the point that I was a mama's boy. I would say that I was a mama's boy. I would stay at home some days and play sick just so I could be at
Be
home.
around your mama?
Just me and my mom.
Aww.
She would rub my little head and kiss me on the cheek and bring chicken soup. As a matter of fact, I'm gonna take off tomorrow and go.
Y'all heard that? He's paying off. He ain't be working tomorrow. Don't be calling the church.
I'm kidding, Mr. Eugene Smith. Mr. Eugene Smith, I'm kidding. Miss Betty, make sure he sees this.
Oh, Lord.
But the other part of that was that I had 4 siblings, and we were all close in age. So my oldest sister she was one age, and then my brother was 2 years after her. The next one was a year later. Then I was 3 years later, and then the baby was 3 years later. So we basically grew up, and so we remember have these fond memories of summers where we were at home alone, kids, and we had been given chores. But during the day, we fight a little, eat together. Sometimes we fight, fix sandwiches, and eat. And then after having fought and called each other names, then we wrap up in a blanket together under the attic fan and take naps. And so there was touch. Now, we weren't being intentional about, I need to hug you, I need to touch you. But it was just that we were
natural thing of closeness.
Natural thing. And I think that's why we're all, now one of my oldest sister passed in 2007, but the 4 of us who are still living are very close. We don't talk a lot, but we're very, 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 very close. And I think that a lot of it has to do with the touch and the connection and the bond that was built between us as children. Growing up in a little small FHA home in Columbia, Mississippi, with not much to do.
Oh.
Yeah.
Wow.
So yeah, it was very important. Very important.
Now with you,
can I add to that? So growing up in a small community, I went to Friendship Baptist Church, and it was a church of probably total membership about 300 people, but everybody knew everybody. And so I didn't belong just to my parents. I belonged to the community. So when I went to church, I was constantly getting touched in inappropriate ways.
Appropriate ways.
By the women of the church. Like they would say, "Hey son, come here, little Johnson," and hug on me. And so there was constant affirmation and touch. So I grew up in a world where that was what I experienced. I didn't grow up in a world where people were afraid to, which by the way, is kind of a culture shock to me when I go into predominantly white environments. And as a black male, people tend to, black men I think are the most feared species in our society. So if I go in a store,
it's sad but true.
There's an alarm that goes up for people just because I'm a black male. So it's a culture shock for me because I didn't grow up like that. I grew up in a community where everywhere I went, I was affirmed through communication, but also through touch and connection. So yeah.
Okay. All right. And my last question for you: with you being a husband, how many years have you been married now?
Been married 30 years, 31 years. This June 3rd will be 31 years.
Okay. Going on 31 years to the same woman.
31 years.
And he has,
Pray.
keep on praying, two wonderful, successful daughters that are both, both in college, or one's going on in their career?
One's at Spelman.
Okay. Go Spelman.
And the other is working with Netflix in LA, doing very well, growing, building her career in the film industry.
That's amazing.
Yeah.
Doing what she loves. So having a wonderful home, wonderful family.
Yes.
How did you take the loving that your mom gave you, that nurturing that you received from her, and the care that your father was giving too? How did you bring that in with your family? What kind of nurturing were you able to give to your daughters?
So, because of the environment I came out of, I came into my marriage as a nurturing person.
Okay.
Believe it or not, of the two of us, Linda is the less touchy-feely person. But that's because she grew up with a single mom. Her mom was tender and loving, but had to have this tough side to raise her daughters after the loss of their father.
Oh, wow.
And so I've always been more of a touchy-feely person in that sense. And so it's interesting that carried over to how we raised our daughters. With our daughters, Giselle and Kayla, Linda was the caretaker in the sense of making sure everything was lined up.
Okay.
Making sure they had something to take to lunch for school, their hair was combed, their outfits were laid out, making sure that any communication with the schools was taken care of, the details of life.
Okay.
And I was the nurturer. I was the one that would hang out with as a matter of fact, there were often part of what the fun of the years of raising daughters and being married is that there were so many times when Linda would be frustrated because she'd be trying to handle details and I want to play with the girls. And so it was like the girls were like, I want to play with it. And so we did that. And so I built that into now I don't think we're the most touchy family. But there is touch and there is connection and then there's emotional connection. Which is a form of touching.
Okay.
Right?
Yeah, it is.
Yes. And so, and by the way, the two girls, sometimes how you touch people has to do with how they respond to touch. So Giselle was the kind of daughter from a baby that would never sit still. She was always on the go. So she wouldn't, if you tried to pick her up, you know how some babies, you pick them up and they don't want anybody to pick them up. They want to get down and crawl and move around. That was Giselle.
Okay.
Kayla was totally opposite. She would sit in your lap for hours. And as long as she wasn't wet or hungry, you didn't hear a peep from her. And she would sit and just cuddle in your arms. And so she was more of a cuddler. So that was kind of built into how we parent and how we built our family that way. And so I think touch is very important, human connection. I want to give a shout out to one of my best friends, Daryl Walker. We call him Pooh because he grew up in a family of touchers. And so it was weird to me because when we've been friends since we were 6, but there were times in grade school that Daryl would come up behind me, we'd be hanging out on the playground and he'd massage my shoulders and do this. And I was like, boys don't do that. But then he grew up in a home where his mom did that to him and his brothers all the time. He and his brothers did that.
Right.
So that was
normal for him.
And then he married a lady, Cassandra, who's very much the same way. So they are very touchy,
oh, I love that.
So it's beautiful. And I'll tell him that I admire that about him and about how he's integrated that into his family.
Well, even with this conversation, you see that touch is so important. Going through Black history and going through all the different things that as African Americans that we've had to deal with, how religion, touch, and all these things make up who we are as a people. And I just want to tell you, thank you, Pastor Johnson.
Thank you for having me.
Yes,
thank you for
being here.
This has been fun. You're great. She's great, isn't she?
He's too much. I'm paying him for this. No.
Look, come in and tell her she needs to start a talk show maybe internet talk show, radio talk show. She's
Oh my goodness.
Please affirm what I'm
Cuddlist,
saying.
thank you, thank you, thank you, thank you for viewing. And as we continue to celebrate Black History Month, remember, we're all the same. Our color doesn't matter. We all need to love each other. So as we end the interviews in terms of the special people in my life, again, I want to thank you for being here. And Cuddlist, thank you again. I love my company. Thank you for not just highlighting Black History Month, but making sure to let everyone know how important it is as a whole for everyone. Bye-bye.